Of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship, left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we the people rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome everyone to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a fun episode here today. We have a guest on the show, Jack Hunter, who is a columnist for the Washington Examiner, the American Conservative, and co-author of The Tea Party Goes to Washington with Senator Rand Paul. And I invited Jack on the show to talk about libertarian populism and whether or not that is the solution to saving the GOP, saving the libertarian movement. And so, Jack, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jack, you know, the article that caught my attention, it was written a couple months ago, is The Right Kind of Realignment. And you're seeing this swelling of various different types of populist movements, from what happened with Wall Street bets to what happened with Donald Trump. So can you kind of paint the picture for us, set the narrative, what's going on here, and then we'll talk about maybe where we go from here.
Absolutely. Well, let's start first with the concept of populism. You know, in the age of Donald Trump, whether you were blue or red, somewhere in the middle, people have debated whether populism is a good thing, it's a bad thing, whether it should be a thing, and everywhere in between, all those different points of view. Populism is not just what Donald Trump did, for lack to put it simply. Populism is the little guy against the big guy. That is the basis for populism. The small guy against the bigger institutions, the powers that be. That's what populism is in a nutshell. So Donald Trump certainly was that. But I would argue that the Bernie Sanders movement was that. I would argue that Howard Dean in 2004 was that. I would argue that the Ron Paul movement, which I come out of and I think you have some sympathy for, was that. I would argue that Jesse Jackson running in 1988 was a populist movement. It's not just me arguing it. If you Google Jesse Jackson and populism, you'll see a lot about his 1988 campaign. That was the little guy against the big guy that also stood policy-wise for things that were very different, or not even all of them, but some things that were very different than what Donald Trump stood for. So the concept of populism, we need to understand that, as I've said more than once here, the little guy against the big guy. My article about libertarian populism is arguing that we should build upon the positive things that Donald Trump did from a liberty perspective, of which there are a few and they are significant, and maybe some other things that he didn't stress, but that could also help grow the Republican coalition, especially based on the vote pickups that Donald Trump received with Hispanics, which drew them dramatically, and the black vote increased significantly for Donald Trump in 2020 compared to what it was in 2016, which he didn't do too shabby. He actually did better than Mitt Romney in the prior election, but it was way better in 2020. So going from that, my argument is, so on something like foreign policy, where I fully agree with Donald Trump's rhetoric that, you know, we need to put America first. We don't need to be nation building. He did not start a new war, which is not since Jimmy Carter has an American president not started a new war during any of their terms. So that's a big deal. But even bigger than that, not bigger than that, but in tandem with that, things like criminal justice reform, which Donald Trump did it in a big way with the First Step Act. This is nonviolent offenders, people who might have got caught selling marijuana in 1979 or 1986 or whatever it was. They got caught up in these awful federal mandatory minimum laws that people like Joe Biden helped institute. We build upon that. I think that had something to do with an increased black vote, an increased Hispanic vote. And even immigration, look, I think I'm a libertarian, but I also think we should have border security. We need to know who's in the country. We can't have people who are criminals in the country. We need to keep better tabs on that. But at the same time, we do need border reform. It is very hard to immigrate to the United States, and it should be some degree of difficulty. But look, white people making upwards of six figures from England trying to come here and become a citizen can tell you the legal horrors of trying to become a citizen. Imagine if you're a Hispanic immigrant who's just trying to do better for his family and come here and do some, a basic labor job. If you could come here illegally and make that same money, or you can come here legally and make that same money, but you don't have the means that the rich white person I was just talking about, you're probably going to come illegally. So we need to fix that. So this is just the tip of the iceberg of what I'm talking about, the things we could expand on, that it's still the little guy against the big guy, but it's from a liberty populist perspective, borrowing a lot from Donald Trump and building upon that.
Yeah, tons of excellent points there, Jack. And, with all these different points, too, I guess what I worry about with this is that people take this collective outrage against the system, right? They're upset with the establishment. They're upset with what's going on. These politicians like Donald Trump are able to take the frustration with the different policy areas they've laid out, get elected. And my worry is that they don't act on those appropriately, too. Like Donald Trump, you're right, he didn't get us into any new wars, but he also didn't get us out of the wars in the way they had promised. We're still in Afghanistan. Who knows if we're actually going to leave? I mean, so how do we trust the politicians to not be the same elites that we keep getting over and over again?
Well, trusting politicians as a general rule is a bad idea. I'm certainly not arguing
Fair
for
point.
that, but I am arguing that we're human. What's up? Go ahead.
I said fair point.
But I am arguing that we are human beings who live on this planet. Politics exist. They existed long before we were alive and will exist long after we're dead. And we can either deal with them and try to use them or, encourage others to go in our direction, or we could just, sit on the sidelines and not worry about it, which is also fine, by the way. That's probably the most sane position sometimes. But what I would say is, so Donald Trump, and look, there's a lot of things I like about Trump. There's a lot of things I don't like about Trump. I hope I'm clear about that. But, that you had this Axios article, Axios, A-X-I-O-S, the news outlet for those familiar listening, that came out just last week about right after the general election, Donald Trump sending out this memo, full withdrawal from Afghanistan, full withdrawal from Iraq. Anybody we've got in Africa, soldier-wise, get them out of there. He just basically gave I want to do this, and the story was about the generals fighting back with him. So he's not the little guy, but he was certainly pushing back against the Washington foreign policy consensus, the Pentagon establishment who want eternal war. And in that story, we were reminded that the people who were keeping tabs on Syria, including the ambassador, the envoy to Syria that he appointed, basically admitted, well, we're playing a shell game with the president. We still have soldiers there. There's no withdrawal. We just don't tell them about it. So there's that. That's the big guys. That's the deep state. That's the Washington establishment. That's the foreign policy consensus. That's the people that Liz Cheney represents. We want to fight against those people. If you use the symbolism of Donald Trump, who might not have followed through in his foreign policy actions, but in his rhetoric was against those people, we want that. And if you look at the polls, most Americans overwhelmingly for a very long time have wanted to withdraw from Afghanistan and all of these places where we have soldiers for reasons that our leaders can't explain.
Yeah, tons of excellent points. And again, it can feel a bit overwhelming to think about that, to think that Donald Trump could order soldiers to be withdrawn from that area, our civilian commander-in-chief, and that our military wouldn't listen to him. And we've seen this a while. Again, the Obama, as a candidate, also promised to end the wars, and look where we got. We haven't got anything. So it can feel a bit overwhelming. Go ahead.
Right. So that's actually a better example of what I'm talking about. So Donald Trump, because he was such a loose cannon, and I mean, whether you're a fan of his or a hater of his, most people would admit he was a loose cannon. His fans like that he was a loose cannon. They have a point to that, which I'm about to get to. Barack Obama campaigned in 2008 largely on the unpopularity of the Iraq War and how all that turned out. And all those neoconservative ghouls, including Liz Cheney and her dad, Tom Cotton, is like this, even though he's pro-Trump or whatever, but they still defend the Iraq War. Not only did they defend it, think it was a good idea, they want to repeat it in Iran as quickly as possible. That's how mistakenly foolish these people are. Barack Obama in 2008 campaigned on being against the Iraq War, and, we're not going to do that again, and we can't have, just the president going to war with professional declarations of war. We need to follow the Constitution. He gets into office and he bows to the foreign policy establishment I was just discussing earlier, because he wasn't a loose cannon. He wasn't going to be the wild man that's like, well, all you supposed experts are telling me we got to do this. I'm not going to do it. Trump was that guy. You know, I to this day, I don't think we would have had the vaccines as quickly as we did if not for Operation Warp Speed, him basically telling the FDA, well, that's how you usually do things. That's how we're going to do it as long as I'm in office. Let's get this vaccines rolling. So with foreign policy, in the end, the foreign policy establishment eventually won out. We still have troops in Afghanistan. Biden says he's going to bring them home. I'll believe it when I see it. And God bless him if he does. He'll get all the praise in the world from me, because it's about the policy, not the person, though for most people it's about the person, not the policy. But all that said, you know, Donald Trump was the loose cannon that would say things that go against the grain, and sometimes it bore out, and sometimes it didn't. Look, the First Step Act, which is the most monumental, and for those listening, some might be familiar, some might not. The First Step Act basically allows nonviolent offenders who've been put into jail for decades Alice Johnson's probably the most famous face of that movement, for those familiar with her. She's an elderly black woman now who basically her boyfriend was a drug dealer, and she was in that orbit when he got busted in 1980, whatever it was. And she just got out of jail a year or 2 or 3 ago. And that was thanks to Donald Trump and this act. That's opening conservatives' minds to big government is more than being highly taxed and over-regulation. It's also the oppression of the state against people with less means to defend themselves, often minorities, people like Alice Johnson, who get caught up in this sort of web of legalese that doesn't make sense. You know, most judges were against mandatory minimums. And for those listening, mandatory minimums were, you know, somebody jaywalked and the federal law says you got to throw them in jail for 30 years because they had 2 prior offenses of jaywalking. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's what it comes down to with some of these cases. Trump's
you're exaggerating a little bit, but not enough.
People to get out. What's that?
I said you're exaggerating a little bit, but not enough for my taste. But I got to cut you off a little bit because we're heading to break now. Again, we're listening to A Free Solution, and we're joined by Jack Hunter, who's a columnist for The Washington Examiner, The American Conservative, and co-author of The Tea Party Goes to Washington with Senator Rand Paul. We'll be back in just a few minutes, and make sure, folks listening live, this is a live show today. Comment online, leave your questions or comments, and maybe we'll read them on air. Thanks again for joining us. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovation should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
The Finger Lakes Castle team is in its 7th decade of factory direct service to the service professional. From cleaning the ins and outs of your vehicle to keeping you on the road, Castle's got you covered. Castle makes streak-proof glass cleaner, FDA-registered sanitizers, and EPA-registered hospital-grade disinfectants. Remember, when you need to keep it clean, use what the pros use. Castle. Accept no substitutes.
Castle keeps it clean.
A message from the National Police Association. It used to be that any able-bodied person would offer to assist a police officer in danger. Now, passers-by are more likely to take a video. There's a better use for your phone when an officer's in trouble. Call 911. Tell the operator where you are and what you see. Then, start your video to provide evidence later. To learn more about how you can assist law enforcement, visit nationalpolice.org. That's nationalpolice.org.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
A free solution.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here live on WYSL until 1 p.m. No phone calls today, but you can leave your comments online, so make sure if you're listening over at A Free Solution on YouTube, A Free Solution on Facebook, or on the Kevin Wilson pages on Twitter or Facebook, leave your comments. If they're good, maybe we'll read them on air. Leave your questions. And shout out down the line to our friends over at WACK out in Newark and WENY, the Patriot down in Southern Tier. Appreciate y'all listening here as well. All right, and again, we're joined by Jack Hunter, who is a columnist for the Washington Examiner, the American Conservative, and co-author of The Tea Party Goes to Washington with Senator Rand Paul. And we're talking about populism today. And, you know, we talked about some of the good issues that I think are ripe for populist sentiment, but so there's a little bit of another side of this. I remember back in like 2015, I think it might have been like a Jeffrey Tucker article he was talking about like anti-disestablishmentarianism, that being against the establishment isn't necessarily in and of itself a good thing. And so I'm seeing like some of the populist stuff rise up even within the Republican Party, and it's going towards anti-market ideals. It's like there's a conflation between being anti-corporate and anti-cronyism, and then being anti-market. So Jack, can you kind of speak to that, and how do we navigate those waters? Like, understand the populist sentiments around corporations, but also not translate that into destroying what is left of the free market.
Sure, and part of my piece at the American Conservative was an answer to what many are calling the nationalists or even common good conservatives. And for your listeners, those are people on the right. They're definitely not on the left, but they're on the right. And their problem with the right is that it's funny, I wrote this at a place called the American Conservative, because the American Conservative tradition is defending the Constitution, individualism, free markets, that sort of thing. That's not what the right is in Russia or England even necessarily, but that is the American tradition going back to Barry Goldwater, and I would argue back to the Founding Fathers. But these people are arguing that, populism, basically these nationalists or common good type people are saying that the left doesn't get it wrong about the power of the state to mold, manipulate human beings. They're just using it for the wrong purposes. So they don't think Elizabeth Warren's economic program is bad. They would just emphasize maybe some different things than she would. Now, as a traditional American conservative who's also a libertarian, as Ronald Reagan said, they're basically the same thing. And he knows a little bit, or did know a little bit, about American conservatism, I would argue. That's going to end in disaster. When Republicans overtook the House in 1994, Newt Gingrich famously said, as the new House Speaker, we shouldn't, what did he say? We shouldn't replace the social engineering of the left with the social engineering of the right. He was right then, and he's right today. So, yes, those people are out there. I think it's going to be a little more difficult than they anticipated with Trump being out of office, who wasn't as eager to use big government as they are, though he was more eager than he should have been for my taste. And Biden, and we're coming out of these coronavirus lockdowns and whatnot, people are thinking in very individualistic, screw government terms right now. So, you saw a little bit of this, let's do the big government right-wing thing a couple of months ago when Josh Hawley and Mitt Romney proposed a $15 and then $10 minimum wage. This was coming from Republicans. they got mixed reactions. You didn't see Republicans and conservatives jumping up and down. Why? Because a lot of Republicans own small businesses and know that would put them out of business, as conservatives have argued for decades, because we understand math and economics. And if these new right-wingers want to pretend that math and economics don't matter because they're just excited about being right-wing versions of AOC, let them have at it. Let's see how successful they are, and we'll keep arguing for individualism and the Constitution and free markets.
I mean, Jack, are we losing those arguments though? I worry that there's a rising tide of that type of sentiment, like that government needs to do something across the political line on both sides.
So let's talk about that. We're in some difficult times. I'm a libertarian because I believe libertarian answers are the best answers in most situations at most times. I am not somebody who believes it's the absolute right formula at all times, because we're human beings and we're fallible, and that's just the way God made us. So let's look at something like big tech. And the traditional libertarian argument would be, well, Twitter is censoring conservative speech, Facebook is censoring conservative speech, we'll just go elsewhere. Well, some people behind a thing called Parler tried to do that, and these big tech companies are so powerful that they just said, well, we're just going to not give you a platform, and they did for a time. And they're back now, is my understanding. But we're in a different space when the market can't even be the answer. Now, so I just admitted, as a libertarian, there's difficulty there. The traditional libertarian answer doesn't meet it. Let's look at our nationalist friend's solution. You talked about losing the argument. Their solution is that politicians should form the, Twitter Transparency Committee, or whatever the hell they want to call it, and that will command during times you would assume when Republicans are controlled by Josh Hawley and maybe Mitt Romney and whatever other Republicans they want to put on there. So that's scary in and of itself, that you have politicians monitoring speech. But right now, if they did that, which these people suggest, that's what getting rid of Section 230 would do, you would have people from the Biden administration, maybe Kamala Harris, maybe some of her Democratic friends, deciding what could and could not be said on Twitter. So is that a better solution, despite the problem that I fully acknowledged? There's not an easy solution to this. But the idea that the libertarians are out to lunch and that the nationalists who are eager to use the power of the state got a clear solution if we only did it is stupid, based on the way I just framed it. And I could be framing it wrong, but if anybody wants to show me where I'm wrong, I'm all ears.
No, I mean, I certainly agree with you. And, putting Facebook, Twitter, these big tech companies in a position where they have full regulatory capture, where they have, the government essentially regulating what they are. They in many ways want to be regulated. They want to be controlled. That locks them into place, and it makes it more difficult to have new competition emerge as you have regulations around speech and content moderation being dictated by the national level. Although it's so bizarre, because I remember discussing this with some folks who are from the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, on another radio show, and they're quoting Josh Hawley at me about regulations, and I'm like, what bizarre world do we live in?
That is the world we live in. I mean, he's a guy. Look, Josh Hawley's so goofy. I'm sure all your listeners have watched YouTube once or twice, and he's so eager to use the power of the state. He's like the preacher in Footloose that wanted to ban dancing. That's Josh Hawley. I mean, that's how goofy he is. But he wanted to have a law where, if you're watching YouTube, when the video ends and another one pops up that's usually related to the video you just watched. He wanted to ban that, like a federal law banning that, because it causes internet addiction. So I'm not saying that it's even good that we're addicted to the internet, as most of us are, including me. But that's just stupid. That's not what the federal government's for. That's not what any government level is for. That's just dumb. But that's where his mind is.
No, it's like the certain types of politicians, they feel like they need to regulate every little thing. If there's a problem out there, only government can fix it. And that's the type of mindset that's really dangerous for our country.
Yes, and I would argue on a deeper philosophical level, talking about these nationalists, it's the reason. It's a big part of the reason that we've been against the left for so long. They have zero problem using the state at the federal level, at any level, to micromanage your life. They think that's what it's for. So these right-wingers that want to do it, I would add on a deeper philosophical level, if you're a Christian and you believe in Jesus Christ and that framework of theology. If you're an atheist or a non-believer out there listening, just hear me out on this. But these nationalists themselves as trads, right? They're traditionalists. We believe in Western culture. We're defending Western culture. Well, at the heart of that is Christianity. Whether you like it or don't like it, or believe it or don't believe it, that is just the historical fact.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to let you finish that point after the break. Again, that's the hard part about doing a radio show. All right. Thanks again. We're joined by Jack Hunter, who is a columnist for the Washington Examiner and the American Conservative Culture. The Tea Party Goes to Washington with Senator Rand Paul. We'll be back with more on A Free Solution in just a few minutes.
The new Dan Bongino Show, coming May 24th. AM 1040 Avon, Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, and FM 95.5 Spencerport.
Here's the latest forecast from the News 10 NBC Weather Center. For tonight, partly cloudy, kind of mild out there. We'll stay in the 50s to near 60 on Thursday. On the warm day, slightly more humid. A couple more clouds around with a small chance of a spot shower or storm in the afternoon, mainly in the Finger Lakes, temps 80 to 85. Same setup on Friday in the 80s, touch more humid, with a slight chance of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm. I'm Rich Cornelia, WYSL.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovation should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Because your future is worth it. MGM Associates Insurance. Proudly serving the region since 1984, MGM can meet your coverage needs, ranging from home, condo, and auto, all the way to specialized policies for business, workers' comp, to limo and taxi insurance, and coverage for tech professionals like IT specialists. They can also help lead you through the confusing maze in the new world of health insurance coverage and options. MGM Associates is large enough to serve you, but small enough to care, so you don't have to wait in line on some 800 number to get prompt personal attention. MGM Associates is the only winner of the National Best Practices Award 5 times in a row. MGM is proud to support veterans groups, including Heroes Home Advantage. For your personal, business, home, or professional insurance needs, put the experience of MGM Associates Insurance on your team. Locally and proudly owned at 1745 Penfield Road in Penfield. 381-7008 or mgminsure.com, an associate of Finger Lakes Fire and Casualty, Route 227 in Trumansburg, New York.
I'll try the blue, it's royal and it's true. It's sexy in the stretch with the saturated hue, or perhaps the red that's bright with or without the light. Tight in the knit, cling to the hip like you're wearing just lipstick, but about pink is pretty pucker perfect. In the 2-piece polka dot number, it's got matching socks in the box, and it's double super cute in your birthday suit. But back to the rack, cause here comes the black to bump the hump out of the Wednesday, making you feel like Friday night, date night, suddenly it's Saturday. But pull on a pop of purple at a 4 or 5 inch plump bump, and that body is socking and that body stocking, but in white fringe, shimmy the shimmy, but whatever shape or shade, as long as it's elegant moments, lingerie, available at Show World.
Hi, Colonel Paul Simonelli here, host of WYSL's Valor Radio Show. Help support veterans and honor National Guardsmen Steve Skoda, Christian Koch, and Daniel Priel, as well as others who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service of their nation. Join us for the Memorial Day run, May 29th. All you need is to be a veteran or a current armed service member and have a motorcycle. Food, drink, and music furnished after the run. Search Facebook for American Legion Chapter 294 for details. Support the Legion and honor our veterans.
Take it, Tony. How's that, Zach?
Terrific, man. Hold on. Hello.
Honey, we need help. We have company coming, and the kitchen sink is clogged.
Oh, man, now I really got the blues.
What's the skitty, Zach?
Drain's backed up, and we got company coming over. What am I going to do, brother?
Call Taylor. 500 Help. Their plumbing experts will fix things up and have you singing in no time.
500 Help. Now that's a hot number.
I think I'm really getting it, man.
Call Taylor, 500 Help.
Hi, I'm Dr. Pat Brophy from UR Medicine, Golisano Children's Hospital. When your favorite team wins, it's because they work together. When a medical team saves a life, it's because they put all their skills together. That's why Golisano Children's Hospital is so dedicated to creating a healthy community. It will give kids in the region access to advanced care, help us do groundbreaking research, and provide top-notch training to the next generation of pediatricians. You can help us do this, so please give to Golisano Children's Hospital.
Here comes the bloom. Celebrate spring with a brilliant car of annuals. Everything you need for your gardens and beds. Farm fresh produce too. 7 days a week at J&A Farm Market and Greenhouses. Route 15 just south of exit 9 off 390. J&A, always bloomin'.
A free solution.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're joined by Jack Hunter, who is the columnist for the Washington Examiner, the American Conservative, and co-author of the Tea Party Goes to Washington, with Senator Rand Paul. And we're talking about libertarian populism today. And of course, if you're listening online too, make sure you leave your comments if you have any comments or questions for Mr. Jack Hunter. Shout out down the line to our friends over at WACK out in Newark and WENY, the Patriot down in the Southern Tier. Here on WYSL, we're live till 1 p.m., so leave your comments up until then. All right, so Jack, you're starting to make a point before we had to cut you off for the commercial break, so I'll give you a chance to continue that before we dive into a couple other issues. So do you want to keep going with that one?
Sure. Let me refresh. We were talking about sort of the nationalist right-wingers, the common good conservatives that are eager to use the power of the state to enforce morality and whatever they think is good for humanity. The point I was making is that most of these people fashion themselves as traditionalists. We're talking about the Josh Hawley wing of the Republican Party, however great or small that might be and whatever following it might have. They fashion themselves as traditionalists, which of course includes Christianity, which is at the heart of Western culture. The point I would make is, what did God say to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden? He told them they shouldn't eat the fruit, but it was their choice, right? They had free will. Jesus Christ wanted you to accept him as your Lord and Savior, but it's your choice. Those choices tell us who you are as a person. That's your virtue. You choose virtue or you reject virtue. The idea that politicians would try to impose virtue on you, whether it's banning the playing of YouTube videos is what it is. I'm sorry I laugh at the say it because it's so stupid. That was Josh Hawley's policy proposal. But the idea of that is a rejection of sort of the heart of Christian ethos, correct? I mean, I don't know how you played that, but I just laugh at these people who are saying that we defend Western culture and libertarians are the problem because they allow people choices and we're just going to use the heavy hand of government to make them do what we want, are actually behaving in a very anti-Christian way. And they can get as mad as they want at that, but damn if I'm not right. I'd like to get back, Kevin, to the original question of libertarian populism, sort of scoping that out a little bit, which is what my article is about. Yeah. I believe that populism is the little guy against the big guy, as I discussed. I also believe that those of us who are outside of the establishment, whether you're wealthy or not, you're connected or not, or whatever, none of that matters. Just regular people, you and I here talking today, the people listening to me. There's certain things we want from government, and there's certainly even more don't want government to interfere with that we're doing. I would argue that most Americans, and the polls show this, want less war. They don't want to send our sons and daughters overseas to fight in things that don't make sense. I would argue that while they want secure borders, that, you know, they want the economy the way we have it, the goods the way we have it, and a lot of that has to do with labor that comes from immigrants. So maybe we need to talk about that a little differently. Things like criminal justice reform. Donald Trump picked up more black votes in 2020 than he did in 2016. He picked up significantly more Hispanic votes in 2020 than he did in 2016. An aspect to that was how extreme the left has become. This is woke nonsense. And, I'm somebody I'm here to talk to your listeners today about criminal justice reform. Police brutality is a real thing. I included in my article Senator Tim Scott, who doesn't identify as a libertarian, but he is black, and he's a Republican, and he's a conservative from my home state of South Carolina. And he tells primarily white audiences, which is his audiences, white conservative Republican audiences, police harassment is a real thing. I got pulled over 7 times in 1 year as a member of Congress just because of the color of my skin. These are the things that we need to talk about within the Trump right, the Republican Party at large, to grow the party. If Hispanics and black Americans who came out for Trump more than they did last time did it in part because they see stupid white liberals and Antifa and doing all this woke nonsense, pretending to speak for minorities, and they're just sort of repulsed by it, we need to build on that. Because that's a very illiberal attitude. That's sort of your critical race theory. And because I'm white or you're white, we're an oppressor despite not doing anything but stuff that our ancestors did a long time ago. Most minorities, a lot of minorities that voted for Trump reject that as well. So we need to build upon all these things and sort of build the Republican coalition. Do I want the 75 million people that voted for Donald Trump? Absolutely. We need to retain all of them, many of which include independents and, as I said, more minorities than anybody conventionally expected. But grow that. A lot of people voted for Joe Biden because he hated Donald Trump so much, but they might really have liked Joe Biden. So maybe a different kind of Republican who can attract all those 75 million Trump voters, but maybe even more, could do better. And that's what populism is, as many people as possible, the little guys, many of them, millions of them, working against the big guy. And that was sort of the crux of my piece.
Yeah, and so kind of building off of that then, what else does that look like for like any Republicans listening in, here in upstate New York, who are maybe thinking of running for Congress, state office? We got, Andrew Cuomo up here, who is an absolute delight. I'm sure you agree. So what other advice would you have for those types of individuals who are either in office or running for office about like capturing this moment and building upon the popular sentiment that's growing?
Certainly the issues I just talked about. Let's put it in raw political terms. You just brought up Andrew Cuomo. This time last year, the mainstream media and the left, the mainstream media is basically an extension of the Democratic Party, their propaganda arm. But this time last year, they were booking, for any old-time wrestling fans that used to go to Madison Square Garden in your state, they were booking Andrew Cuomo to be Hulk Hogan and Ron DeSantis to be the Iron Sheik, right? Ron DeSantis was the bad guy, opening up the beaches in Florida. And Andrew Cuomo's writing a book, and Joe Biden's calling him a great leader. I forgot what he called it, but everybody remembers that. This is recent history. Now we're at a point where it looks like everything Ron DeSantis did, allowing people to go outside on the beach instead of sitting in their apartments and giving each other COVID, balancing economic interests of businesses being able to operate, having a healthy economy, with concerns about COVID, because there were, it's not like Florida was completely wild compared to what Andrew Cuomo did, it was, I guess. But then to Andrew Cuomo, who killed all these people in nursing homes, and, I won't even get into the sexual harassment. The point is, the elites, the big guys that we populists would be against, got it all wrong about Cuomo, got it all wrong about the policies. There were far more deaths. And they got it all wrong about the guy who's supposed to be the villain, Ron DeSantis. So the first lesson I would tell any politician, which is what you just asked, don't listen to the experts. Listen to your own conscience. Listen to common sense. Listen to what the people around you are saying. Now, they can be wild, too. There are plenty of Republicans who still think the election was stolen. I do not. But there are plenty of Democrats who still think Russia stole the election in 2016, which also wasn't true. So people will tell themselves anything to emotionally satisfy major losses. But in general, the people around you, your friends and family, regular people, not people in D.C., not people on Wall Street, are the people you want to listen to and you want to react to. If you're a person that doesn't have many principles, it's probably a good bit of advice that I just gave. If you're a liberty person like I am, and you are, Kevin, maintain those principles and take into account your immediate surroundings and listen to real people, not the elites.
Yeah, I mean, what a concept that we should, listen to the folks around us and form our own opinions and not just, go with whatever the tribe says this time around, or, whatever convenient answers,
right.
Soothe the bad situation regardless of evidence. And, that Andrew Cuomo thing drives me nuts because, he got $5 million for his book. to develop these policies that ended up killing so many people, and the media was fawning over them all the way through the end of the year. And there's still Democrats. It's wild. I talked to Democrat friends here in New York State. They're like, yeah, Andrew Cuomo did a great job. I'm like, what about the nursing home situation where he covered up all the deaths? Oh, except for that, he did a great job on COVID.
Except for that.
Except for all the dead old people. Except for that, he did great. Oh, okay. I don't know what to do with that. But anyway,
I don't mean to laugh because people.
It's terrible.
But they would dismiss it as comical.
Yeah, So some parts of politics, it's so ridiculous. Like, if it weren't real lives on the line, if it weren't real force on the line, if there weren't really people being hurt, it would almost be funny. But in this case, yeah, it's not. It's like I want to laugh at my friends, but also like how can I shake you into the reality of like this is not the guy to follow. This is not the guy to listen to. No matter what the media told you, you need to think for yourself, just a tiny bit.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And I encourage independence of thought in all shapes and sizes for sure.
All right, so I think we're coming up on a break right now, so I won't get into any new points. But again, we're joined by Jack Hunter, who is the columnist for the Washington Examiner, the American Conservative, and co-author of The Tea Party Goes to Washington with Senator Rand Paul. And we got one more segment coming up. Thanks again for joining us on The Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Hi, my name is Ryan Bourne.
And I'm Danica Bourne.
And we're the owners of South Coast Tax. We would like to thank our Lord for protecting us from evil. Psalm 91 states, "He is my refuge and my fortress, for he will rescue us from every trap and protect us from deadly disease."
South Coast Tax are Christian-based tax accountants and attorneys who specialize in releasing bank levies, wage garnishments, and filing complex tax returns. We are the leaders in acceptance of offers and compromise with awesome results.
We are also a small firm who will treat you like family and not just a number.
Call us today at 1-800-TAX-1176 for a free consultation, and we'll take the time to explain all of the programs that you qualify for in order to allow you a fresh start.
In John 8:36, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. And one way we can achieve that is by being debt-free. So let us help you today. Call us at 1-800-TAX-1176, and together we can help achieve this goal by putting the IRS tax debt behind you for good. Again, that number is 1-800-TAX-1176.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
A free solution.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, host for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're live here with Jack Hunter, who's a columnist for the Washington Examiner, the American Conservative, and co-author of The Tea Party Goes to Washington with Senator Rand Paul. We're on our last segment of the show, and we did get one question in, or I guess a comment in from Mike. He says, I'm worried the public may want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with foundational American values. Democrats already appear to be intentionally trying to break the current system in place, which isn't the worst thing, but I'm afraid what comes after, because it would likely mean exceptionally more harmful in the future. They are trying to keep all the bad and break a lot of the good with America. And I think that might have been a comment that came in when we were talking about, kind of definitions of conservatism and being against the establishment not necessarily meaning a good thing. Jack, any thoughts on that? It kind of sounds like he's thinking of like conservatism in the traditional sense. Don't throw everything out. Don't throw out the good values that still make sense.
That's exactly right. And I would agree with the commenter to the degree that he or she also meant, many of my libertarian friends think that if things collapse, that's when libertarianism will take. No, that's when you get like fascism and pure socialism, and like people are so desperate they'll go for whatever authoritarian speaks to them the quickest. You never want that to happen, and you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Look, if critics of free markets and capitalism are right now, whether you're AOC or Josh Hawley, had every vestige of capitalism immediately removed from their life, January 6th would look like a picnic. People would be going absolutely insane. Last summer, the violence in the streets and all that would look like a picnic. Imagine if all your friends and family right now didn't have their iPhone, couldn't go get a potato at the grocery store because just every little thing you don't think about. I could talk to you right now on the radio, like you wouldn't have your phone, like every little thing that you don't think of on a daily basis because we're blessed to be in a country as great as America that does have capitalism and free markets. Well, there should be freer markets, but we do have those things. If you didn't have all those benefits that people don't think about. Josh Hawley and AOC would be joining hands and storming the Capitol themselves, and not even understanding why because they're too goofy to realize how much free markets benefit their lives. But not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Look, I think that most Americans, you have partisanship or all tribalists. It's part of our nature. But it's more than red and blue. And, in the introduction of the show, talk about being beyond both parties and not just being partisan. Well, I think most Americans, if I had to pick one figure, it wouldn't even be a political figure, that represents where most Americans are, I would pick Joe Rogan. Now, people laugh at that. Oh, here's this meathead guy who hosts UFC, but has a pretty damn good show, good podcast, a very intelligent guy. But here's a guy who supported Bernie Sanders, but if it came down to Biden and Trump, he was going to vote for Donald Trump because he didn't like Joe Biden. What that tells you is he's ready for something different. It's not so much about right and left to him. He's ready for something radical against the consensus. He's ready for the little guy to take on the big guy. He's ready for something populist. I think that's where a lot of Americans are. I think that the Tea Party was the precursor to Donald Trump because people were tired of business as usual. A Jeb Bush could run in 2016 and think like, well, I'm a Bush, it's in the bag, and spend $150 million or whatever he spent, and he got nowhere close. I think if Trump wasn't in the race, it could have been Rand Paul because he was certainly the anti-establishment Tea Party candidate. But Trump sort of overwhelmed everybody. You see this in the Democratic Party. The base, the ideologues, the people who really inspired and pushed the Dems wanted Bernie Sanders. Well, Hillary put a stop to that in the last election, and they kind of pushed Bernie out in this one. And unlike Ron Paul in 2008-2012, he played ball and endorsed Hillary and Joe Biden. But I guess we had a better radical in our ranks on the right sometimes. But the point is that I think most Americans are just fed up with the establishment of both parties. I think the popularity of Bernie Sanders and certainly the enduring popularity of Donald Trump speaks to those things. There was a time when Liz Cheney and her father sort of ran the show in the GOP, and the fact that she was pushed out is symbolic of where the base is. They're tired of it. They don't want those people anymore, and that's an entirely healthy thing. It's a wonderful thing.
Well, Jack, you kind of mentioned how people are tired and frustrated with both parties. I agree, actually, that most people are like Joe Rogan. They kind of go either way. They're frustrated with the system as it exists now, and, they want to ask genuine questions about, like, what's the best thing to do here. So, I left the Republican Party a few years ago. I was like, oh, maybe I'll try my hand at the Libertarian Party, see how that goes. What are your thoughts? Like, is it time for a third party, or like do we have to operate within the structure that exists now?
Well, we don't have to, and I wish we didn't have to. Well, let me rephrase that. We shouldn't have to, and I wish we didn't have to, but the way the system's set up right now, it looks like we have to. Look, I supported libertarian candidates in the past, including Joe Jorgensen and Gary Johnson and others. For me, it's a vote of conscience. And just for the record, I haven't voted for a mainstream nominee since Bob Dole in 1996 because I was, I think, 19 at the time. It was my first vote, and my first choice, Pat Buchanan, because I was an anti-war conservative, told me to. And I was a kid, and I thought, well, if he said that, I must do this. But after that, it was third-party candidates the whole way. That's how dissatisfied I have been for most of my life with the establishment of both parties, especially during the Bush-Cheney era. As a conservative, a libertarian who leans right, I quit calling myself a conservative because people be like, oh, you're like Dick Cheney. I'm like, no, I'm not. I guess I'm not a conservative. That shows you just how fluid that term is. As far as the Libertarian Party and whatnot, like, you know, I'm a huge admirer of Justin Amash, who was a Republican and now is a Libertarian. Figures like Comic Dave Smith, who I think is one of the most intelligent defenders of the Libertarian Big L position. But vote of conscience. I wish those people the best. Some of my closest friends work or have worked within the LP. But I think when it comes down to the nuts and bolts, it's going to be a Republican versus a Democrat, and I'm interested in making that Republican be the best possible version, especially post-Trump and the opportunities that's open, that it can be, whether it's Ron DeSantis or somebody else like can have it in 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I understand that position as I've kind of set myself up as mostly being for the Libertarian Party, but I want people in the Republican Party to be successful with liberty positions too. I would love more Democrats to do that too. I don't know if I should hold my breath for that, but maybe, you know, like there's a couple issues I can agree with, the criminal justice reform stuff and occasionally some immigration foreign policy.
Yeah,
in theory.
People like Ro Khanna people like Ro Khanna now, the congressman from Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard, who's no longer there, they're solid progressives. Ron Wyden in the U.S. Senate, I don't think Rand Paul's partnered with anybody on surveillance or anti-mass surveillance legislation, anti-NSA, more than Democratic Senator Ron Wyden. So there's people to work with. The problem with most of those people, they're just so twisted up about Trump. They'll like be total neocons and say pro-Bush Cheney stuff. Hell, Bill Kristol and all those neocon people is a lineup on MSNBC now just because they didn't like Trump. The same people that these same Democrats marched in the streets 18 years ago saying Bush lied, people died, are now partnering and buddy-buddying with the people who agreed with Bush lying and people dying. So that's how strong partisanship and tribalism is.
Yeah, good to see. It'd be great for them to have some ideological consistency over the years. So yeah, you know, these same folks who are, you know, part of the disaster that is our foreign policy, like, no, let's not give them a platform. They're not their allies. Democrats, what are you doing? Come on, you were right the first time. Stick with that. Go.
Yeah, and they don't care. They'll partner with neocons the day comes home and forget that Bush Cheney ever happened. And look, at the end of the day, there's, you know, Tom Woods talks about the remnant, a small group of people who are consistently principled, as you just mentioned. That's always going to be a group. It's never going to be a majority. Most people are watching a wrestling match. There's a good guy and a bad guy, and whether you're blue or red, it depends on who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. And if you're for them or against them, that's how you vote. And that good guy or bad guy could be 100% opposed to what you just believed 10 minutes ago, and that's the way they're going to vote. That sounds cynical, but that's how people are. It just is what it is. Hence the MSNBC lineup being the former Bush administration and CIA officials who lied us into Iraq. So,
right, as long as they're fighting the bad guy, then that's fine. They're on our team now. No, it's a bit sad. I mean,
people got mad at Van Jones for partnering with. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Van Jones.
Democrats got mad at Van Jones for partnering with Trump administration officials on letting brown and black people get out of jail earlier who've been put in there by horrible, draconian federal mandatory minimum sentencing. That should be a progressive issue. But because he did it with Donald Trump, they called him racist names and horrible things. CNN contributor Van Jones, who's a black man, all sorts of things because he partnered with the bad guy. Even for an issue ostensibly you think progressives would be for, it didn't matter. He was on the bad team.
It's wild. Yeah, Van Jones is he's pretty, you know, like a radical leftist, I would say. But yeah, he stuck to his principles on that, and I applaud him for that.
He partnered with the Iron Sheik, right? But he went with the Iron Sheik instead of their Hulk Hogan, which would have been Hillary or Joe Biden. So that's all that mattered, and that's how people are. People on the right do it too. I don't mean to single out Democrats.
It's both. All right, so real quick, Jack Hunter, any last things to say before we go?
Enjoy this conversation today. You can find me at the Washington Examiner and Jack Hunter 74 on Twitter.
All right, right on. Jack Hunter, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on The Free Solution. Larry Sharp will be in tomorrow, folks, and I'll be back on Friday. Talk to you then.